European migrant crisis political debate. Slavoj Žižek identifies a double blackmail in the debate on the migrant crisis, those who argue Europe's borders should be entirely open to refugees, and those who argue that the borders should be closed completely. European People's Party. European Commissioner for Migration, Home Affairs, and Citizenship, Dimitris Avramopoulos, said that the European Commission does not care about the political cost of its handling of the migration crisis, because it's there for 5 years to do its job with vision, responsibility and commitment, and what drives it is not to be re-elected, and invited European national leaders to do likewise and stop worrying about re-election. On August 31, 2015, according to the New York Times, Angela Merkel, German Chancellor and leader of the Christian Democratic Union, in some of her strongest language theretofore on the immigrant crisis, warned that freedom of travel and open borders among the 28 member states of the EU could be jeopardized if they did not agree on a shared response to this crisis. Nicolas Sarkozy, president of the Republicans and former French president, compared EU migrant plan to mending a burst pipe by spreading water around the house while leaving the leak untouched. Following German Chancellor Angela Merkel's decision to allow tens of thousands of people to enter Germany, Sarkozy criticized her, saying that it would attract even greater numbers of people to Europe, where a significant part would inevitably end up in France due to the EU's free movement policies and the French welfare state. He also demanded that the Schengen Agreement on borderless travel should be replaced with a new agreement providing border checks for non-EU citizens. Party of European Socialists. Italian Prime Minister and Secretary of the Italian Democratic Party Matteo Renzi said the EU should forge a single European policy on asylum. French Prime Minister Manuel Valls of the French Socialist Party stated, "There must be close cooperation between the European Commission and member states as well as candidate members." Sergei Stanishev, president of the Party of European Socialists, stated, "At this moment, more people in the world are displaced by conflict than at any time since the Second World War. Many die on the approach to Europe, in the Mediterranean, yet others perish on European soil. As Social Democrats, the principle of solidarity is the glue that keeps our family together. We need a permanent European mechanism for fairly distributing asylum seekers in European member states. War, poverty and the stark rise in inequality are global, not local problems. As long as we do not address these causes globally, we cannot deny people the right to look for a more hopeful future in a safer environment." Eurosceptic parties. According to the Wall Street Journal, the appeal of Eurosceptic politicians has increased. Nigel Farage, leader of the British anti-EU United Kingdom Independence Party and co-leader of the Eurosceptic Europe of Freedom and Direct Democracy group, blamed the EU and Germany in particular for giving huge incentives for people to come to the European Union by whatever means and said that this would make deaths more likely. Additionally, he said that the EU's Schengen Agreement on open borders had failed and warned that Islamists could exploit the situation and enter Europe in large numbers, saying that one of the ISIL terrorist suspects who committed the first atrocity against holidaymakers in Tunisia has been seen getting off a boat onto Italian soil. In 2013, Farage had called on the UK government to accept more Syrian refugees, before clarifying that those refugees should be Christian due to the existence of nearer places of refuge for Muslims. Europe of Nations and Freedom co-president Marine Le Pen, leader of the French far-right National Front, accused Germany of looking to hire slaves by opening its doors to large numbers of asylum seekers among a debate in Germany whether there should be exceptions to the recently introduced minimum wage law for refugees. Le Pen also accused Germany of imposing its immigration policy on the rest of the EU unilaterally. Her comments were reported by the German and Austrian press, and were called abstruse claims by the online edition of Der Spiegel. Centre-right Daily Die Welt wrote that she exploits the refugee crisis for anti-German propaganda. Geert Wilders, the leader of the Dutch Party for Freedom, a member of Europe of Nations and Freedom, who is known for his opposition to Islam, called the influx of people an Islamic invasion during a debate in the Dutch parliament, speaking about masses of young men in their 20s with beards singing Allahu Akbar across Europe. He also dismissed the idea that people arriving in Western Europe via the Balkans are genuine refugees, stating, "Turkey, Greece, Macedonia, Serbia are safe countries. If you flee them then you are doing it for benefits and a house." Future of the crisis. While data recorded by various bodies and organizations including the UNHCR, IOM and Frontex shows that the overall numbers of immigrants entering Europe has significantly decreased, suggesting that the peak of this crisis has been passed, it is far from over. The growing number of migrants from the sub-Saharan and Sahel regions, along with several West African countries, is a cause of concern for the EU. Ease of access via the West Mediterranean route has boosted migrant numbers from Africa, with preference being given to Spain over Italy or Greece, as a landing point. Michael Moeller, director of the United Nations office in Geneva, said, "Young people all have cell phones and they can see what's happening in other parts of the world, and that acts as a magnet." In August 2017, various world leaders, including Angela Merkel and Emmanuel Macron, met in Paris to devise policies that would combat this situation. Since poverty and lack of education are the biggest push factors prompting migration from Africa to the EU, obstacles like perilous journeys and harsh living conditions at the destination are unlikely to deter African migrants. The crisis is experiencing a lull after the first explosion, and is soon headed toward the next stage of illegal immigration. Klaus Schwab, founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, warned the refugee crisis could be precursor to something much bigger. Saying as the crash in commodities prices spreads economic woe across the developing world, Europe could face a wave of migration that will eclipse today's refugee crisis. Adding, look how many countries in Africa, for example, depend on the income from oil exports, Schwab said in an interview ahead of the WEF's 46th annual meeting, in the Swiss resort of Davos. Now imagine 1 billion inhabitants, imagine they all move north.